Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the Agenor Media stream. Um, if you like the content you've seen so far, well, I would invite you to do just that. Leave a like, leave a comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell for more content in the future. So, like the title says, today we're going to have a good conversation. Last week, I spoke about the necessity of having a standard of womanhood. Obviously, it was in the context of relationships, but the way the world works is if you keep things only at face value, you keep missing the big picture. And today, we're going to have a conversation about just that, the big picture of why having a standard of womanhood matters. Because you have to ask yourself, what is a woman? And we're going to dive into this, but none of the aspect of relationships. We're going to dive into this regarding the aspect of what happens when women fail to realize how they need to conduct themselves. And that opens the door for other people to claim their own title. So without further ado, we got a few content to cover today. We're going to get right into it. So, I want to talk about how the trans community, or about how lately we have women who are complaining about how the trans community is quote unquote stepping on their rights. Okay. And the example I want to use is that of this athlete over here, Miss Riley Gaines, right? So there was a swimmer named Leah Thomas who was a man before, switched to being a woman, and then went to basically win the competition. And you're gonna see how she kind of describes that she put in a lot of effort into preparing for this, and how she chose to become a feminist to fight against that very concept of dangerous and unfair competition. So I'm gonna let her actually explain it herself. So I'm gonna offer some commentary in case I get flagged for this. So I might pause it every now and then. So, what is a woman? This is the topic today. What is a woman? If we don't have a standard for womanhood, like I asked in the previous episode, then what is a woman? And you're gonna see how it matters more than just about relationships with men. Okay, let's get right into it.
My name is Riley Gaines. This past year I recently graduated from the University of Kentucky, where I was on the women's swim and dive team all 4 years of my collegiate career. I grew up here in Nashville, Tennessee. I started swimming at the age of 4, so I've dedicated 18 years of my life to my sport. Dedicated 18 years of my life to achieving maximum performance. So of course this means in your sport-specific training, in the weight room, your sleep schedule, your diet, your physical rehabilitation. There's so much that goes into competing at the highest level. I was extremely fortunate to be heavily recruited. Ultimately, I chose the University of Kentucky, where I had a phenomenal experience. Transitioning to college, that I thought I had worked hard my entire life, but that was a whole new level of working hard. My sophomore year, we came back. I was having this breakout season. In March of 2020, that's when our NCAA championships were supposed to be. About 3 days before we were supposed to leave, COVID hit. And of course, it took the US by storm, and our NCAA championships got canceled. When we were told we were being sent home, it was a really scary feeling. Of course, pools were closed, gyms were closed. There was no way really to continue improving in your sport, which is...
Keep in mind, so far, the way she's talking about it, you don't really have that big of an impact yet of the trans community invading women's spaces, right? She spent 18 years developing for the sport. She's been preparing in her college, so she didn't really have to worry about somebody else trying to pose as a woman that would take her achievements. Okay, this is important to understand.
Which is a scary thought when you know you're eventually going to have to come back and compete. So I'm very fortunate that, like I said, I'm from Tennessee, where there's an abundance of lakes. And so every day over COVID for months, I put on a wetsuit and I swam aimlessly in this lake, miles every single day, just hoping to continue improving. I came back my junior year, and where a lot of my competitors and my teammates were at this disadvantage because they had taken a few months off, I was at an advantage. I just really picked up where I left off and had, again, a breakout junior season. I came back my senior year, and I knew I could accomplish even more than I had my junior year. And this is when I really set a goal to become a national champion. About halfway through my senior year, I was on pace to do so. I was ranked third in the country. The swimmer who was ranked first was a swimmer I had never heard of before. And of course, this was the first time that I became aware of a swimmer named Leah Thomas. And so, unbeknownst to me at the time, this was a male, there was a lot of head scratching going on. This person came out of nowhere, their senior year. They were leading the country by multiple seconds in multiple events. We were just confused who this person was and why we had never heard of Leah. And it wasn't until a few days after these nation-leading times were posted, an article came out disclosing Leah Thomas is formerly Will Thomas and swam 3 years on the men's team at University of Pennsylvania before deciding to switch over to the women's team. And I read this, and I was so shocked by this information, but truthfully, I felt almost a sense of relief because I was able to look up who Will Thomas was. We saw this was a mediocre male swimmer at best, ranking the year prior 462nd nationally among the men at best. And that's why I say I felt a sense of relief, because I thought the NCAA would see this exactly how I saw it, exactly how anyone would see it. So about 3 weeks before.
Mediocre at best in the realm of the men. Okay. Even before she gets involved in all this situation, she explains that in her mind, the average understanding should be, she explained that the average understanding should be that the basically the guy joined because he can compete with the men, and he shouldn't have a right to compete with the women, right? So there's a basic understanding about that. Let me get back to where it was.
Truthfully, I felt almost a sense of relief because I was able to look up who Will Thomas was. We saw this was a mediocre male swimmer at best, ranking the men at best. And that's why I say I felt a sense of relief. I would see this exactly how I saw it, exactly how anyone would see it. So about 3 weeks before our national championships in March of 2022, the NCAA announced that Leah Thomas would in fact be competing with the women, and there was nothing we could do about it. It was this sense of helplessness. Of course, I tried not to let it distract me from my goals and what I had set out to achieve, because again, this was something I had worked my entire life to get to this meet, knowing you're going against someone who, no matter what training you put in, no matter what, how talented you are, there's a certain level of advantage that you can't overcome, no matter what you do. So it almost felt as if we were going into the race with our hands tied behind our back. I can wholeheartedly attest to the tears that I saw from the 9th and 17th place finishers who missed out on being named an All-American by 1 place. And I can wholeheartedly attest to the extreme discomfort in the locker room when you turn around and there's a 6'4" biological male dropping his clothes fully intact with an exposing male genitalia, watching you and other girls undress. It just felt like betrayal. It felt as if the people who were supposed to be protecting us, the people who were supposed to be ensuring that we're able to compete fairly and safely, were doing everything in their power to take that away from us as female athletes.
Remember these sentiments very well. It will be important for the later part of this show. It felt like betrayal. Guys, I'm just setting everything up to make sure that nobody comes here and says that, oh, it came out of my mouth. No, you're hearing it from a woman first. Okay? Remember, it felt like betrayal. She thought everybody would see this the way she saw it, that a man was just not good enough to compete with the man, so he came in to compete with the women. And she agrees that there are simply advantages that a man has over a woman in terms of competing that is simply too hard to overcome. Right? So marking that there's a clear distinction between men and women. Let's continue.
So that next day of competition was the 200 freestyle, which was the event that Thomas and I competed against each other in. We both swam in the morning. We qualified top 8. We came back that evening and we raced, and ultimately we tied. We went the exact same time down to the 100th of a second. And so we go behind the awards podium, and the NCAA official looks at both Thomas and myself and he says, "Great job. You guys tied. We don't really account for ties, so we're gonna give this trophy to Leah." And so I was, of course, taken aback by this. Leah has to hold the trophy for photo purposes. You can pose with this 6th place trophy, but you'll have to give it back. You will go home empty-handed. Leah takes the trophy home. And that is when I realized I'd had enough. I knew the unfair competition was wrong. I knew the locker room aspect was wrong. But when this official reduced everything that I'd worked, again, my entire life for, down to a photo op to validate the feelings and the identity of a male at the Women's National Championship, that's when I was done waiting for someone else to speak up.
To validate the feelings and identity of a male. So clearly she does not refer to that, whatever she is, as a man. Sorry, damn. Does not refer to that person as a male. She refers to him as a female. She refers to him as a male. So even in the nature of competition, you see, this is why everybody loves competition. This is why everybody loves sports, because ball don't lie. The gate tape don't lie. You can't just pretend to be something you're not.
My name is Riley Gaines. So we're going to give this trophy to Leah. I realized I'd had enough.
You can't just pretend to be something you're not and not think that you're going to be exposed. Okay? Remember this again. She thought everybody would understand this for what it is. That you're just trying to take away you're just trying to destroy competition in a weaker division because you can't compete where you are. You felt betrayed. You felt that the people who were supposed to watch out for you were doing everything they can to take away your rights and privileges. And as the last thing she said, what did she say?
You can pose with this 6th place trophy, but you'll have to give it back. You will go home empty-handed.
Yeah, and you don't want to validate. You're upset that now the trophy you were supposed to win was used as a photo op to validate someone else's feelings.
Leah takes the trophy
Remember
home.
these 3 things.
And that is when I realized I'd had enough. I knew the unfair competition was wrong. I knew the locker room aspect was wrong. But when this official reduced everything that I'd worked, again, my entire life for, down to a photo op to validate the feelings and the identity of a male at the Women's National Championship, that's when I was done waiting for someone else to speak up, because truthfully, up until this point, I was waiting for a coach to say something, a parent, another swimmer, someone within the NCAA, someone with political power, someone else who was supposed to be protecting us to stand up for us. But I realized that's not what we were seeing. And it really hit me that if we as female athletes aren't willing to stick up for ourselves, how can we expect someone else to stick up for us? And that's what really put...
I agree with her. The same way you have these women complaining that, WNBA women should be paid the same as the men, but the women don't even go pay and watch the WNBA games. And they keep yakking about nothing about how they're not paid the same as the men. Or when you had the women's soccer complaining about that they want to equal pay salary, but they're getting a higher percentage pay point than the men. who generate more money, by the way. But let's continue.
Pushed me over the edge into taking a public stance on saying why it's harmful to have men infiltrate into women's sports and women's spaces. This experience and really taking a public stance in just common sense, quite frankly, and the truth has drastically
Keep women's sports female. That's what's written on her shirt.
Changed my life. I thought that at this point this year I would be in dental school. I ultimately decided to put that off this past year because I see what's at stake if someone doesn't fight for protecting women's sports. And I understand dental school will always be there, and so I've reapplied for dental school this fall. But I still don't know what my future looks like. This is something I constantly pray about. I just ask God to put me where I am needed. But my life, it's been totally flipped upside down.
And I commend her for it, because now she understands that it needs a sacrifice. You put away a personal goal because you understand that there's a bigger picture that is needed, that needs to be taken a look at. And somebody needs to be the flag bearer. So I commend her for that. But if you go down the article, basically this covers everything she said in the video. But I want to go to the part where she says that she decided to become a feminist, right? She decided to become a feminist basically because she felt hopeless and it was unfair competition, and now she's getting involved. She chose to be more involved on a political sense, protect women's places so that they can be for females. The reason why I'm saying all of these things is because I want to make sure, I want to explain to people just how important it is to learn and to keep receipts. Okay. She chose to become a feminist. In the beginning of this show, guys, it wasn't a mistake, right? The first page you saw, you remember what it showed you, right? It was a bit of foreshadowing regarding the title. Let's go look at this article right here. Feminists have long supported trans rights. Guys, as we dive into this article, you are going to see, because we fail to recognize history, because we forget, okay? You're going to have people who don't even realize that they joined the very camp who put in the groundwork for the very thing they oppose to oppress them, okay? By the way, just to make sure that we have a clear understanding that there's a difference between men and women, Florence Griffith Joyner, okay, the fastest 100-meter running woman, she clocked in at 10:49 seconds, okay? Compared to the men, I think she was ranked like the 2,000 or 3,000 something. If I just go look at the Missouri State High School team, okay, and I go to the sprints, 100-meter dash, we got 10:42, 10:44, 10:47. We have high school boys who beat the fastest woman on the planet, if you take their head-to-head times. This notion that we are equal needs to stop. This is what I mean every time I say that we keep trying to reinvent the wheel where we don't need to. And this is why I'm here. I'm here to remind you folk that the wheel works just fine. We don't need to reinvent shit. This is why I'm here. So remember, she chose to become a feminist to fight against this injustice. But we're going to find out, exploring this article, that the feminists are actually the one who set her up to fail. The feminists are the one who set her up to be against Leah Thomas, who was previously known as, I think, Will or something Thomas, and she never had a chance. So let's check. Let's check the article out, right? written by Kelsey Burke, is an award-winning sociologist, associate professor of sociology at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and author of The Pornography Wars, The Past, Present, and Future of America's Obscene Obsession. So this is not just an article about someone in their feelings and who doesn't have a degree or doesn't have any kind of reference material. Okay. July 27, 2023, 8 a.m. All right. There you have a picture over here. Hundreds of activists protest a private talk by the Women's Liberation Front at the Central Branch of Seattle Public Library in February 2020. From the Lindsay Wasson for the Washington Post. All right, so I'll read it out. In a new survey of more than 5,000 Americans, the Public Region Research Institute, the PRRI, found that the vast majority of feminists support transgender rights. Guys, last week when I said women have learned nothing in the past 30 years, it wasn't just a joke to make fun of women in their poor choices in relationships. Okay? But you have to think three-dimensionally. A resounding 81% of self-identified feminists responded, for example, oppose laws that prevent children from receiving medical care for a gender transition, compared with only 56% of Americans as a whole. 81% of feminists oppose basically anything that had to do with transformers. That's how I'm going to call them. I'm not going to descend myself to the point of using cis this and cis that. A man is a man, a woman is a woman. Okay, it's been that way for thousands of years, and it's worked just fine. While 1 in 3 Americans say it is never appropriate to teach that some people are transgender in K-12 public school, only 1 in 10 feminists in the survey agreed. Again, so you have this. This is women who support this. This is not the men. Okay, as a man, you're caught hanging around the gay dude in school. You're getting beat up, or you're getting told that you're also, he's your friend, he's your boyfriend. So this is not the men. This is the women supporting this. Okay. These findings challenge the prominence of those who robbed their opposition to transgender rights movement in the language of feminism. This group includes author J.K. Rowling and columnist Abigail Shrier of the Wall Street Journal, who had called advocacy for trans rights a war on women. So basically, you did have a few understood where this was probably going. But again, like I said, can't nobody tell you ladies nothing nowadays. Celebrities Bette Midler and Macy Gray also have attracted negative attention on Twitter for posting similar remarks. Transgender people and their allies call such figures TERFs, or trans exclusionary radical feminists. The term has become a descriptor online for a brand of feminism to justify opposition to transgender identity and equality. You don't even have a standard of womanhood, that you don't even have a standard for what feminism is. Because even amongst yourself, you're bickering and you're fighting each other. Why? Because you don't have a standard of what a woman is. Let's continue. Yet, while social media is aflame with the debates about TERFs, the empirical and historical evidence is clear. Most American feminists are far from trans exclusionary and have long been amongst the most supportive groups of LGBTQ equality. That is true. Again, women have been pushing that shit, not the men. Feminists have debated over time whether and how to support LGBTQ rights, but they have never, as a whole, neither today nor in the past, discriminated in large measure against trans people and their allies. But one group of women has unequivocally and uniformly attacked fluid and non-traditional conception of gender and sexuality from the 1970s through the present day: conservative women, i.e. probably the traditional women, right? The women that keeps winning most of the time. The keep me's, not the pick me's. Okay. I explained what the difference is between the two in the last show. At the height of the Cold War in the middle of the 20th century, American women of all political persuasion were exposed to messages that idealize a traditional white heterosexual family and its attendant gender roles of male breadwinner and full-time female homemaker. Religious leaders, elected officials, and every aspect of the media hailed this model of family life, the traditional nuclear family as it came to be known at the dawn of the arms race, as a marker of American superiority over the enemy Soviet Union, where men and women were taught to work alongside each other in state-run factories. Well, and guess who outdid the other, right? And you see, there's a reason why I keep telling you guys this. Social media is a tool of modern warfare to push a conversation or a specific narrative. What do they tell you here? Every aspect of media hailed this model. What have we seen in the past 10 to 15 years? What has media done? Media has flipped the script to try and flip every social construct we know on its head. It has tried, it is still trying to effeminate men, to emasculate men as much as it can, but it can't. You know why it can't do that? Because there is a standard of manhood. It doesn't matter how modern the world gets. We still have traditional expectations when it comes to the men. This is why it won't work on the men. Because every time you scream toxic masculinity, but there's a woman being assaulted on the train and everybody's just standing by and looking, you still expect a man to do something. This is why a man can come back and tell you that your toxic masculinity argument is bullshit. You go to the movies, you go to the restaurant with a man, with your boyfriend or with your husband, and somebody pulls out a knife when you leave. He doesn't get to say, you know what, baby, I don't really feel like being a man for the next 2 to 5 minutes. Why don't you handle, huh? Why don't you go out there and be bad, right? Why don't you give him some of this bad stuff, this strong independent stuff for the next 2 to 5 minutes, right? Let me take a break of being a man. Let me take a break of manhood. No, because the standard is to have a certain disposition at all times when it comes to leadership, protection, and provision. This is why this bull jive don't work on the men. This is why when you see the men don't deal with these problems of women thinking they can be a man and going into man sport. No, they get fucked up. That's what happens. Yeah, anything a man can do, a woman can do better. I can't tell. Not with all this crying and this complaining she'd be doing. No, don't get me wrong. I agree with her. But I'm talking about all this hype, all this Kool-Aid women be drinking today. Oh, the future is female, girl magic, yak, yakety yak, yakking about nothing. Again, you got a bunch of slogans, but you don't have a plan. Anything a man can do, a woman can do better. You can't run faster. If you go to combat sports, man, y'all getting demolished. And the one who try the opposite, when they want to step into a man's world, oh, they find out real quick what strength is. They find out real quick what power is. Let's continue. Many women, however, rejected this American ideal in the 1960s and 1970s. In the 1960s and 1970s witnessed a vibrant resurgence of feminism with several factions of activists. So in other words, a bunch of you crazy heifers out there had these ideas, and since the 19-something, they already knew it was a bad idea. But your head hard. You don't listen. You don't learn nothing. So you came back with this bull jive. As opposed to feminist groups that primarily focus on changing laws, self-proclaimed radical feminists, the group referenced TERF acronym, focus on making the personal political by criticizing the institution of marriage, heterosexuality, and normative notions of love, family, and child rearing. To fully untangle themselves from the patriarchy, these radical feminists tended to promote a separatist politics that distanced them from men, which shaped some activists' views on transgender inclusion. For example, some prominent radical feminists such as Robin Morgan and Janice Raymond insisted that trans women would forever be men and should thus be excluded from the feminist movement. Damn. See, what is a woman? What is a woman? Because, if I understand this right, because that person was born a man, even if they become a woman to trans movement, they cannot be a feminist. This is why this is all messy. You don't have a standard of what a woman is or what a woman is supposed to do. Woo. Yet, as historian Kristen Williams has documented, figures such as Morgan and Raymond were constantly challenged by other feminists. Further, transgender women and men have long and fully participated in all factions of feminist activism. Despite pockets of resistance to their inclusion within certain groups, transgender activities were the movers and shakers of, indeed integral to, even the most iconic feminism of the 1970s, as historian Finn Enke put it. Unlike feminists, conservative activists from the early 1970s through the present day have taken a far clearer and unified stance against non-normative expression of gender and sexuality. For them, God created men and women to fulfill distinct, complementary roles within the family and broader society. In other words, the bigger picture. And therefore, biological sex and gender are inextricably linked. These ideas compelled women to advocate the conservative politics of family values in the 1970s and early 1980s. So you had a pocket of women who understood what a woman was. Again, you had a bunch of extreme feminists who try to reinvent the wheel as to what the standard of womanhood should be. And because you didn't have a unified standard, now you're allowed, or anyone to just come in and say, hey, I can identify as a woman. And don't forget, I'm going to keep showing you guys this to remind you that we don't learn nothing. She chose to become a feminist to fight exactly what these people have been supporting since the damn 1900s. Now, does that make any kind of sense? Okay, now I know she's blonde, but I mean, damn. At what can be considered the height of feminist activism in the early 1970s, conservative women began publicly squaring off against feminists over the proposed Equal Rights Amendment, the ERA, to the Constitution. Oh, this get messy. The amendment would have guaranteed men and women equality under the law. Congress overwhelmingly passed the ERA in 1972, but its momentum soon stopped as conservative women mobilized across the country to block its ratification in state legislatures. 38 or 3/4 of the state must approve of any amendment to the Constitution. Activists, so in other words, these conservative women saved your asses. And you ladies don't even know it. Activists, most notably conservative Republican activist Phyllis Schlafly, opposed the ERA because of what they claimed was the scientific, religious, and common sense fact that women were fundamentally different from men. The same way she was out there complaining that you have a man who goes into women's locker room, gets full naked, gets to look at a bunch of women, and he has male genitalia lying around, and he's supposed to be called a woman. Okay? These are thoughts all the way from the 1900s. This ain't new. Even 15 years ago, we didn't have these issues, these problems we had today. Through death discursive maneuvering. Their strategy was to insist that they were the actual protectors of women's rights, not feminists. Who did you join? What did you join? Oh my. Let's keep it going. While feminists argue that the ERA would require federal laws that then only protected men to also include women, and vice versa, activists such as Schleifly insisted that the ERA would take rights away from women by not recognizing their distinct experiences as men. I'm going to read this part again because I don't think a lot of you understand what this means. And I don't think a lot of you understand the foresight these conservative women had at the time to understand the implication of a law passing. See, if that law would have passed, then all this complaining that Mrs. Gaines is doing, she would have no right to make it so. She would have no right to complain that a man can't do what a woman is doing. See, while feminists argue that the ERA will require federal laws that then only protecting men to also include women, and vice versa. Vice versa means all the laws that protect the women also protect the men. So therefore, I don't think you get this 50-50. I don't think you this would have opened the door for when it comes to alimony, because now you're working, right? So you don't need 9 months at home. A man doesn't get 9 months at home. I don't give a shit if you carry the baby. We are equal. You get a few weeks, then you go back to work. I don't give a shit if it's dangerous for you carrying a child. You said you wanted to be equal under the law. A man doesn't get to sit at home for a year or 9 months. You don't either. Welcome to the world of equality, ladies. Words matter. Words have power. Instead of talking out of your ass using stupid stuff that you don't understand, take the time to actually learn and understand what the hell you're saying. That would have, see, what happened during those years, from then until now, women have essentially traded equity for equality. Equity means, there's a perfect illustration of equity versus equality. It has, basically, it's the image of a fence. You have three people, a fence, they're trying to look at a game over a fence, and there's 3 boxes. Equity means the shortest person gets the most number of boxes to look over, and the tallest person's gets the least amount because he doesn't need it. And if he can already see over, he doesn't get any boxes. In that image, there's a tall person who can already see over the fence in the image of equity, so he doesn't get any boxes. There's a average height person who he's just there, but he can't see quite right, so he gets 1 box. And then the shortest person who really can't see over the fence gets 2 boxes to step on. So now everybody can see over the fence, but it's taking into account the differences between the people to adjust their needs and what help they should get. Equality. The equality picture means everybody gets a box. So the tall person who can already see just well, now he gets a box where he's tall enough to lean with his arms on the fence and be very comfortable. Average person, well, he gets a box and he can kind of see over the fence, but I mean, it's all right. He has to step on the tip of his toes a little bit and he might be able to see. And the short person, well, he still can't see shit. You know why? Because he only got 1 box. That person needed 2 boxes to look over the fence. And this is what women did in this present day. You traded the concept of the world or man giving you 2 boxes to look over the fence to see what we see, to saying, oh no, you don't need help. You strong, independent, don't need no man. You can do battle by yourself. You only get 1 box. And this is why you are walking blind today, because you don't see shit. In the last 30 years, you have learned nothing because you see nothing. Equal rights means whatever you do, I can do. And since you kept pushing to include trans people in the community, and you don't have a standard of womanhood, who are you to say that there can't be a woman? Because if we're equal under the law, as a man, if I say I'm a woman, you can't do anything to me. Slavefly and her allies claim, for example, that the ERA would end homemakers' right to stay at home and instead require all women to work outside the home to be equal to men. Yes. The ERA, according to Slavefly, would force women into unisex restrooms. Oh. Oh, when they worked outside the homes. Guys, what are we seeing today? These unisex restroom at the restaurant, in public surfaces. This is what's going on right now. From the 1900s, they understood. It didn't make no damn sense. But again, you don't want to listen because can't nobody tell you nothing. The fact of life, which no legislation or agitation can erase, is that women have babies and men don't. Slavefly asserted in one of her newsletters, she and her allies warned that the ERA proponents wanted to take away laws and policies that provided maternity leave and child support to women, rather than grant those same rights to men as feminists envision. What did I say earlier? If you're going to be equal as a man, men do not get child support, men do not get maternity leave, you don't get it either. In other writings, Slavefly explicitly concerned her position, connected her position to the ERA to her position to the LGBT right movement. Right, because she understood one invites the other. It's like you give them your hand, they take your whole arm. You guys remember when they just wanted a day for Pride? Oh, we just want a day. Now they got a whole month. Now they're coming after your kids. Now they're teaching your kids at school what a man and a woman is. Oh, it's a slippery slope, isn't it? One pamphlet produced by Slavefly Eagle Forum titled The ERA Gay Aid Connection explained that the ERA would give the homosexual a constitutional weapon to impose their anti-family lifestyle on our society. Man. Isn't that what we have going on today? Don't they have a law that says if you do not support the gender switching of your child, now they want to take the kid away from you? Constitutional weapon to impose their anti-family lifestyle. Guys, they are against the nuclear family principle. They told you what they were about. And despite all these degrees, PhDs, and LLCs, you couldn't see shit coming. In other words, the ERA would decimate America's legal system and societal norms that had been built upon a version of the family that was centered around heterosexual marriage and traditional gender roles. Like I said, it doesn't matter how modern the world gets, we still have traditional expectations when it comes to men. And because we don't have a standard of womanhood, we don't know what a woman is. Because the modern woman refuses to have expectations placed on her shoulders. That is a revolving door. Because now what happens is that anyone who has an idea of what a woman should be can go in and pretend to be a woman better than you. This is why you had Caitlyn Jenner, who was Bruce Jenner, within a year of becoming a woman, was Woman of the Year. And y'all just let that happen. See, you people have time to go protest, to have Amber Heard as your flag bearer of, female abuse, even though she's a damn abuser herself, right? Because she's caught on videotape admitting that she's punching people. But you have time to go protest against Johnny Depp. But you don't have time to go protest the fact that within 365 days, a man switched to becoming a woman and did it better than all of you. It's a damn shame. Ultimately, the campaign by Slavefly and her allies triumphed, and ratification of the ERA fell just 3 states short. 50 years later, we're once again hearing the same arguments about biological differences and the supposed unique abilities and legal rights of cisgender women and girls that Slavefly and her allies wielded in the ERA fight. That's not surprising because social conservatives are leading the fight to keep transgender women and girls out of sex segregated spaces such as women's sports and public restrooms. This year alone, nearly 50 anti-transgender bills have become law in at least 20 states. So in other words, they saw this shit 50 years ago. 50 years ago, there was already an understanding that what is happening right now would happen. Did you ladies listen? Did the modern woman listen? You see, let me explain something real quick. You see what's happening to the women right now? It's the oldest trick in the book. It's the oldest trick in the book that is happening right now. They sell immorality to the women first. And then, after they seize control of the women, or enough of them, then they corrupt the men. In the Garden of Eden, who did the serpent whisper to? See, Adam was busy. He said, you're going to be a gorilla, you're going to be a horse, you're going to be a panda, you're going to be a snake. What you say? Hey man, look, I got time. I'm busy. You're gonna be a lion. You're gonna be a tiger, a zebra, right? See, it was just fine when he was handling his business. Oh, the serpent whispered to Eve. That's right. Who was sold this sexual liberation, sexual freedom bull jive? The women. It wasn't men who was telling you ladies, hey, go out there, get your back blown out for 10 to 15 years. No. You told that amongst yourselves. Sex in the City, all these shows promoting promiscuity, promoting empowerment. And you look back now and every last one of you ladies look tired, 30, 40 years up, 40 years old, going up. And it's the same thing that happened here. You see, what did the women used to tell the men in this Me Too movement, right? You basically told men to shut up because how you feel is enough validation, is enough justification that can ignore any logical argument, any factual evidence. And guess what the trans community and the trans folk are doing to you right now? They are telling you that because this is how they feel, you have no right to contest their beliefs. Whoopsie. And now all of a sudden you have women trying to make the case that, oh, well, women can have babies, trans women can, so that's why you're a real woman. See, now you want to go back to what the men were trying to tell you. They just use judo on you. The same bullshit you were telling the men to shut up, they're now using to tell you to shut the fuck up. And the women push this movement to give these people constitutional right to do exactly what Miss Riley Gaines chose to fight and protest against by becoming what? The very group that supported it. You can't make this shit up. You cannot make this shit up. You can't. Let's keep it going. While the self-proclaimed feminists who oppose trans rights generate headlines and online attention and scorn, they are far more the exception than the norm. Instead, it is the same white conservative Christians who have long battled feminism who are leading the charge in both activism and attitude against transgender people. All right, see, the women who are against this, they always have some type of other name than just feminists because they're not being recognized as a true feminist. They're not recognized as true feminism. That's not what it is. This is why you ladies need to wake up. This is why a standard of womanhood matters. Because without that, you cannot define what is a woman. And because you can't do it, they're sweeping in and they're willing to do it for you. They don't have a problem coming after your kids and tell them that is a woman. See, like I said before, earlier, men don't have this problem. You think you're a man? Hey, get in the ring. You're going to find out real quick what you're about. Yeah. Oh, you think you're a man, huh? Okay. Yeah. You think you're a tough guy? You think you're that guy, huh? Yeah, come in, step in. It doesn't take that long to find out what you're about. But womanhood is not the same. And they're just coming in from left, right, and center and telling you ladies what you should be because you refuse to abide by any standards for yourself. National surveys consistently reveal that white evangelical Protestants have the highest level of support for anti-transgender legislation, limiting healthcare, bathroom, and sport access. The new PRI survey finds that 92% of white evangelicals believe there are only two genders, which makes them more than 3 times more likely to hold this view than self-identified feminists. Feminist figures who promote skepticism and hostility towards transgender people can do harm, but a few loud voices do not represent the majority. Terms like TERF risk obscuring reality, as in the past it is white Christian conservatives, not feminists, who are trying to ensure that the law reflects the idea that one's biology at birth is inextricably linked to traditional gender roles. So, Miss Riley Gaines, what this article is basically trying to tell you is that it wasn't feminism what you're trying to join that has made sure that it kept away the situation that happened to you from happening for the longest. It was the conservative ones. And because you learn nothing, because women are they're so conceited, you refuse to listen. You learn nothing. You strong, independent. Yak, yakety yak. Nobody can tell you what to do. You refuse to take direction. This is what happens. You don't even understand that the very group you're joining does not care about helping you. And you ladies wonder why. Don't nobody give a damn about your movement. You ladies wonder why men, listen, this is what I believe. This is the claim that I'm making. Ain't no man worth a damn of common sense will look at feminism and not see that it is nothing more than opportunism. Because every time you have an opportunity to prove what you ladies are about, you do the exact opposite. You prove and you showcase that it is nothing but an opportunity. And now, What she is protesting against something that her very own group supported for 50 years and then some. So the question is, what is a woman? What is a woman for Ms. Riley Gaines to say that Leah Thomas shouldn't have had the right to compete? What is a woman? Is a woman someone who gives birth? Is a woman someone who says she's a woman? What does a woman have to do to be recognized as a woman? I mean, I don't want to put more oil on the fire, but let's just say a woman is infertile, right? Is she not the same as a trans woman? Right? Because she can't, she's not fertile, she's barren. Is that an argument the trans community can use that, hey, are these not considered women since they're barren and they cannot have children? Do women start becoming women at past 40, 50 years old when, their eggs are done? You see what happens when you keep Pandora's box open? And now, this is what you ladies did for the past 30 plus years. All this talking about men ain't shit. You've isolated yourself from the men. Men don't want to deal with your shit anymore. And the people you thought were your friends, they're now turning on you and telling you what you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to do it. My question is this. What you gonna do now? Every argument you have, they're using it against you, the same way you used it against the men. You see, now they're calling you see how they have these actually said at the end in the article, right? You have women who keep calling fake misogyny and violence against women in certain places where it doesn't happen. Well, same thing here. When you have women who try to keep women's spaces safe, they're being called a group that, causes hostility and harm to women. Ladies, you are getting the exact same treatment you gave the men. They just stole your playbook and used every move on you. And just like I said in the conversation in terms of relationships, the conversation about relationship cannot go forward until we define what the standards of womanhood is. And you ladies will never recuperate your women's spaces until you have a definition of what a woman is. Do you want equality? Or do you want to retain the equity that was established, that takes account for the differences between men and women, that takes account for the differences in the fact that after you've given birth, you can't go back to work right away. You need to recuperate. Or do you want to take the equality route and keep using words you think you understand, but you don't know what it means? Because when we apply it, you start complaining about how it ain't fair. See, we've tried two things so far. We tried the part where women don't listen and women talk and men just shut up. We tried the part where men talk as well. Women talk, and women still refuse to listen. The last option that is on the table that's left to be tried is where women shut up for once and listen. And men talk. Because the women amongst you have been trying to help you for a long, long time. A long time. This is what it comes down to. You have the irony of a woman joining the very group or the very entity that doesn't even have a standard as to how they define themselves, that supported the very situation that she called injustice. Ladies and gentlemen, what is a woman?